Hey, there's CPO here, and we are finally getting to this tail servo. I've got all the cyclic servos into the helicopter. Now it's time to move to the tail. The servo I picked for the tail is the Fitec FS9357D. Essentially, it's a Futaba S9257 clone. The fact that it's a Futaba clone means I can get gear sets pretty easy for it for rebuilds. And it's a pretty popular servo amongst the clone or budget builds, and has fairly good torque, fairly high speed, and just seems to be a pretty solid tail servo. So you can look up the stats on it, but it's pretty good. And actually, it's the first servo I bought for the helicopter. As you know, I ended up going with the Turnigy S306G HVs for the cyclics. I have an extra. I could use this for the tail if I want, but as you can see, there's quite a big difference in size of the two. And interestingly, that's going to play a part in the mounting, because here's what I need to mount the servos in the tail. And as you can see, the Fitec is going to fit nicely into this carrier, whereas if I was going to use the Turnigys, I would need to get an adapter because it's too small to fit in there. So it actually became very convenient to use the Fitec for the tail servo, just because it's going to mount right up into the mounting location that I need for it. So what we're going to do next is get this thing hooked up to my flight barless system so that I can get it centered. Alright, I am all plugged into the Robird. As you can see, I have it in the servo tail port, which makes perfect sense. So that's where it's going to be plugged in to the flight barless system. Now the next thing I need to do is consider which servo horn I want to use for this. Recommendations for the 450 Align T-Rex type helicopters, which this is a clone of, is 7.5 to 10 millimeters for the center of the gear to the ball distance. In doing research, it seems like 8 millimeters seems to be about the perfect spot for the servo arm. And so what I did is I looked at all of these servo arms that I had available. I had a bunch of different ones: a 4-star, a 6-arm star, a 2-arm star, and I had this little wheel. And what I actually did, I just basically set my trusty digital caliper to 8 millimeters and started looking for which one was going to have a pretty decent fit of 8 millimeters from the center. What I found, this little servo wheel has a perfect 8 millimeter hole on this little guy. There's the outside hole on all 4 sides is 8 millimeter. So I thought, man, this is going to be perfect. It may be a little bit unorthodox to use a wheel. I do know people have used them. But you know, I see a lot of these 4-arm stars going on to the rear. I'm actually going to go with the little circle wheel here. So basically what I want to do is get that centered at 90. Of course, I haven't turned anything on yet, so it's probably gonna adjust on me here soon. But what I'll do is I'll just basically, I only have 2 points to center with my trusty centering tool, which I'll pull out my square, and basically I'll just run from the center of this hole to the center of that hole and use that as my guide for centering. So next what I'll do is get this thing fired up so that we can start that process of getting it aligned with the fly barless system. By the way, here's the box for the Fitec. As you can see, the dimensions here. 0.08 seconds at 4.8 volts, 0.07 seconds at 6 volts, and you can see the torque values there. So, got this from hobbyhot.com. I'm pretty sure I got it on eBay from them as an eBay seller, so it was cheap. I don't remember what it was now, but you know, 15 bucks or so, something like that. Okay, so we have our servo mount. We have our servo, and what we're going to do is get this put in the proper position inside the servo mount. The servo mount is going to go like this. Inside the helicopter, slide this over here so you can see it. It's going to slip in. Those holes are going to line up just like that. And it's going to sit out the back of the helicopter just like that. So this servo is going to have to go in. Your cable's going to go through and point to the back. And it's going to sit just like that. So that's how it's going to mount into the back of the helicopter. As you can see, your servo arm is going to want to connect up with this link. So, and that's what's going to control the pitch of the tail blades. So now that you have that picture, your servo arm is going to want to go this way, right? So if we put the wheel and we're looking at this hole going that way, I want to find one that aligns at 90 degrees that way. Now I can't do it yet because I'm not powered up, right? So what I need to do is get this connected to my fly-barless system. And I'm going to flip the helicopter over so you can see this fly-barless that's going to be plugged in here. Alright, so I'm plugged in to the servo tail port. Orange is up, just like before. And I'll set these side by side so you can see what happens. So now what I want to do is apply power to the ESC with plugging the battery in. Okay, you can see everything snapped together. My fly-barless system is basically going through its initialization. I'm going to power on my transmitter. Actually, my transmitter is powered on, which is why I have a red light here. And now I'm going to go to my USB. You can tell as I move this fly-barless system around, those servos are chattering because it's trying to do some alignments, right? It's not set up yet, but it knows enough to know, hey, when you move me, I got to do some adjustments. So that's why you can see, even you can see the tail servo wheel moving when I turn this up and down. Once we get through the setup process, that will stop. So now the movement of the fly-barless system doesn't impact any of the other servos because it's in a setup state. So look at my collective pitch, everything still seems aligned. Let's go straight to tail. And basically what I want to do here, I'm going to set this to 0 because I don't know what's what right now. And I'm going to look at which one of these outside holes lines up with the 90 the best. Now keeping in mind, I'm looking at this backwards, and it's kind of hard because you expect that the cable is going to run towards the front of the helicopter. But in this case, it actually pushes out the back of the helicopter. So keep that in mind. I want the 90 to go off this side. And that looks like it's going to be pretty close right there. So I'm going to take this out of here. It's because it's getting in the way. Now that I have my bearings straight. That one looks pretty good right there. I'm pretty sure that's my 8mm, which is what I'm shooting for. But let me double check with my caliper here. Yep, that's an 8mm hole. So it looks like it should be settable to 90 pretty easy. So I'm going to use my square here, same way as I showed before, and I'm going to try and get this done, and I'll do this off camera because it's easier for me to see it. I'm going to make a few minor tweaks. You can hear those other servos chattering. All right. Now that I have that set to where I think it needs to go, I'm going to hit save here. Save, it's my understanding saves whatever settings you make in the actual software, although it does not write it to the flybarless system. From this last screen, you can either hit finish or go back to the welcome screen to initialize. And as you can see here, it will write that data, restart the flybarless system, and then everything's good to go. Okay, so what I want to do before I unplug everything is identify which one I selected as my hole. Right, with this wheel, it's going to be a little bit challenging to find it. So in this case, I'm just going to take a marker and mark the hole that I want to be my 90. So I marked it, and now I can take that wheel off and pretty easily get it back into place afterwards. So I'm just going to leave everything all powered up for now. Alright, so fast forward through, and here we have the completed assembly of the tail servo. As you can see, I have the ball on the wheel. Again, this is an 8mm distance. The only thing I have left to do is actually to screw the wheel onto the servo itself. This is a plastic gear servo, so I don't need to worry about thread locker or anything like that. I'm just going to screw this straight in. I want to apply pressure to make sure that I don't strip out this top thread as this threads through. I don't want to strip out the top of the screw head. It's pretty snug to screw this through. Okay. Now I can unplug this from the flybarless system so that we could go ahead and mount it onto the helicopter. Now remembering we have this bracket, okay, this is the side that points down, the side with these little raised areas. The flat side points up. And the wire is going to come out the back of the helicopter. So the side that attaches to the helicopter is going to get the other side. So now I have these little self-tapping screws and little washers. Let me do this differently. These are going to be these larger. These are 2.5mm heads. Again, another one with a, I've got a washer on there. Oddly enough, the washer isn't much bigger than the screw head, so I don't know how much value it provides, but that's what the assembly calls for. Okay, just like that. And then same thing on the back side of the servo. And honestly, I'm missing a washer. I only have 3 for this. I'm not sure. The other one will probably turn up somewhere. But like I said, the washer is about the same circumference as the head of the screw anyway. So honestly, I could get away without putting any washers on these, and it will be just fine in my opinion. So in fact, these two, I'm not even going to use a washer on. See how the washer's just barely, they're just barely bigger, but I think that's going to hold just fine. And basically I have now a completed assembly ready to install onto the helicopter. Okay, so this is going to go just straight up into here, and basically what you're doing is just aligning those screws in the holes. Same type of screws that were used to mount the servo, these self-tapping screws. I'm going to kind of loosely put it in the top, so I've got some room to move it around. And then once I get them both lined up, then I'll snug them down. Turn the helicopter over. And the same thing on this side. Now you can see how this hole doesn't quite line up the same way, so I can tweak it just a bit before I tighten it all the way down. No thread locker required because I'm going in metal screw into plastic. And there we go. That is basically how that goes onto the back of the helicopter. Now the next thing I need to do is insert my link end onto the ball. So the A goes up. Make sure you can see that. So just doing a quick check for that A, that's going to go up. And it's just going to slip into there and then press onto the ball. Now if you're having trouble getting it pressed on because of the angle and how tight that is in there, you can get something to kind of reach in and pop it down, just like that. Or you can use the pliers. I don't know if the pliers will fit in there any easier. But essentially, you now have control from this servo of the tail rotor pitch. Open that up just a little bit. Through this control arm. Okay? So the next thing we'll start working on is getting that pitch adjusted and centered where we want it. But for now, we have the tail servo onto the helicopter. And that's it. We're getting that much closer to complete setup. And should be time to start getting that part started. From this point, I think I'm going to start working on wiring now that I have all of the electronics in. and then all the other components that are going to be inside the helicopter, I can start looking at where I want to route wires around. So that's going to be probably my next step, is going to be the wiring of the helicopter. So I'm going to, again, take off this side panel on this one side here, and run the wires, and then reinstall everything back in. I want to get everything run before I do the mechanical setup on the head, because I may have to loosen up or remove servos or do something else. I want to have all that kind of buttoned down before I start making the very fine-tune adjustments with the link bars, because I don't want to have it all adjusted just perfectly and then have to take stuff all apart again and then readjust it. So I think that's going to be my strategy, is from this point forward, start working on putting the electronics in. The other thing I'm going to do when I put the electronics in is put this battery tray on, which is just going to slip right in here. And this isn't quite how that's going to go, but the ESC will be down inside there, and then the battery connection, not these, but the battery connection for the ESC I'll have come out the bottom. And then the ESC will be inside there, the connection to the motor will be inside of there, and I'm going to have the flybarless system down in here. I don't know exactly where I'm going to mount these satellites, but I'm thinking I'm probably going to have one, you know, horizontal mount on one side and then one vertical mount on the other side. So that's kind of how that's going to go. So anyway, we're moving along, and that's where we're at. So appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.